Why do the cold-hearted climb while the virtuous stagnate? Why does the kind man bow while the brutal man commands? We are taught that goodness leads to greatness, but the world contradicts this myth every day. Behind every empire, every throne, every CEO is a mind that chose power over sentiment, dominance over diplomacy. In this video, we unveil a truth that society hides. Not because it is false, because it is too dangerous to speak aloud. We will expose why ruthlessness, not righteousness, so often wins. The answer is not comforting, but it is liberating. The herd cannot lead. It follows, imitates, and worships the illusion of safety. In the crowd, there is noise, loud enough to drown out thought, truth, and self. Power is born in silence, and silence can only be found in solitude. The man who desires to rise must first learn to walk alone, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. Solitude is the crucible where the self is stripped of all masks. Without the mirrors of others, a man is left with only his will, his pain, his vision. There, in the absence of applause and comfort, his true nature is revealed. Most flee from this confrontation, preferring the shallow warmth of belonging, but the one who endures solitude sees further. He becomes the architect of his fate, while others remain decorators of cages they mistake for homes. Ruthlessness begins not with cruelty toward others, but with an unflinching gaze toward one's own limitations. The solitary individual is forced to confront every weakness without excuse. There is no one to validate mediocrity, no one to cheer for failures repackaged as lessons. Only the brutal honesty of reality remains. From this pain emerges clarity, and from clarity comes the seat of command. Those who are constantly surrounded by distractions, people, approval, never develop the internal strength needed to bend the world. They are too busy asking for permission to realize they can simply take what they desire. The one who bears solitude has already taken the first throwing dominion over himself. Society trains us to fear isolation. It teaches that to be alone is to be unloved, unworthy, dangerous. This is by design. A man in solitude is unpredictable, ungovernable. He cannot be guilted into obedience or seduced into submission. His values are self-forged, not inherited. His actions are calculated, not compelled. This makes him a threat to every system built on consensus and conformity. Institutions despise the sovereign individual because he cannot be controlled. He does not ask what is acceptable. He decides what is necessary. That is why ruthlessness, its pure form, is often mistaken for evil. But it is not evil, it is independence with sharp edges. The solitary man does not seek validation from others, nor does he rely on them to define his worth. His ambition is not rooted in jealousy or revenge. It is forged in a furnace of self-creation. When you remove the noise of the crowd, you are left with the raw metal of being. You either melt or are reforged. This man, having endured the silence, becomes immune to manipulation. Praise does not move him. Criticism does not wound him. His goals are not social. They are existential. He is not climbing for applause, but for conquest, not to be seen, but to see clearly. Those who need company at all times are those who cannot bear the weight of their own thoughts. They seek distraction to avoid the discipline of confronting their emptiness. Power does not come to those who are comfortable. It comes to those who are willing to face discomfort and remain unmoved. To lead others, one must first master himself. To master himself, one must strip away every external dependency. Solitude is the battlefield where that war is won. A leader born from solitude does not negotiate with weakness. He does not confuse kindness with virtue, nor cruelty with sin. He sees through both as tools, to be used, not worshipped, because he has stood alone. He does not flinch when others oppose him. He does not need them. His power does not come from their acceptance. It radiates from within, carved by countless hours in the dark where lesser men tremble. That is why he wins. He is not louder. He is deeper. Not more visible, but more rooted. In a world that runs from silence, he makes it his weapon. In a world that fears being alone, he becomes the one others follow, because he no longer needs to. The world does not reward goodness, it rewards strength. The myth of morality was not born from truth, but from necessity. The necessity of the weak to survive among the powerful. They invented it not to elevate themselves, but to tame those who would otherwise crush them. What we call virtue is often just fear wearing the mask of righteousness. The strong act, the weak explain. The strong move, the weak moralize. To win in this world, one must unchain himself from the prison of inherited ethics and see morality not as sacred law, as a set of tools, and sometimes as obstacles that must be broken. Goodness, as preached by the masses, is rarely rooted in principle and often anchored in submission. It is a strategy of appeasement. Be kind, they say, and you will be rewarded. But life does not guarantee reward. The lion is not loved by the gazelle, but the lion eats. The storm is not praised by the trees it destroys, but it reshapes the forest. Nature does not care for sentiment, it only respects dominance. And yet, man, terrified of his own primal instincts, has built walls of guilt around power. He calls it civilization, but it is merely containment. The man who dares to step beyond these walls is not evil. He is awake. To obey moral codes without question is to surrender your will to dead men. Most of what is called moral today was constructed by those long gone. Kings, philosophers, each with an agenda, each seeking order, not truth. And yet, the average man carries these codes like a shackle, never questioning whether they serve him or strangle him. He is taught that to question morality is to flirt with darkness, but darkness is not the enemy. It is the origin. From it comes the raw material of strength, will, transformation, your authority. Only the man who ventures into it can reforge his spirit into something untamed. Ruthless people win because they are not distracted by the illusion of universal goodness. They understand that life is conflict, not consensus. When they enter a room, they do not ask, what is right? They ask, what will work? This is the cold logic of those who prevail. They are not without emotion, but their emotion is not in command. They feel, but they choose. They see that compassion has its use, but so does cruelty. And when compassion becomes a weakness, they discard it. Not because they hate others, because they refuse to hate themselves enough to bow before what is ineffective. The morality of the herd keeps men in line, not because it is noble, because it is useful for control. It teaches people to be agreeable, even when silence would be betrayal. It teaches them to be humble, even when confidence is required. It teaches them to be selfless, even when self-preservation is the only path to survival. These teachings benefit the crowd but destroy the individual. And so, the man who aims to rise must disassemble this inner programming piece by piece. He must look at every inherited value and ask, does this make me stronger, or does it make me smaller? A true greatness is amoral, not immoral. It exists beyond the boundaries of simplistic good and evil. It is not about doing harm for its own sake, but doing what must be done without apology. The rulers of history, the emperors, the conquerors, the revolutionaries, were not saints. They were visionaries with the stomach to act. They did not wait for permission. They did not shrink to fit the expectations of others. They knew that to bend the world, they first had to bend their own instincts back into their hands. And so, they unlearned the morality that kept their peers passive. They replaced it with the code of will, force, and necessity. In this modern age, where the masses worship kindness and demonize power, those who still dare to rise must walk a dangerous path. But it is the only path walking. Morality is a story, a useful one for those who need protection. But the man who seeks to lead, to conquer, to outlast, must write his own story and refuse to be bound by another man's script. Society, for all its grandeur and ceremony, is a mechanism designed to protect itself from the terror of the individual. It does not admire uniqueness unless it can be diluted into harmless novelty. It does not praise originality unless it can be monetized or moralized. The truly independent man, the one who tears away from the common mold, is never welcomed. He is feared, ridiculed, or crushed. What society calls goodness is often nothing more than obedience, and what it condemns as dangerous is often simply the refusal to bow. From the moment one is born, the machinery of conformity begins its work. Schools are not temples of wisdom but factories of domestication. They produce citizens, not thinkers. They reward compliance, not insight. The child who questions too boldly is labeled disruptive. The one who does not follow instructions precisely is deemed problematic. And so, the spirit is broken early, not by violence, but by the slow erosion of will through repetition and shame. By the time the individual reaches adulthood, he has learned not to think freely, but to think acceptably. Culture, media, religion, and law all reinforce this doctrine. Be like others. Think like others. Do not deviate. Do not disturb the order. What is this order but the silent agreement that mediocrity is safer than greatness? The masses gather around idols of sameness, elect leaders who flatter their prejudices, and celebrate artists who express what they already believe. The truly subversive mind, the mind that shatters illusion rather than rearranging it, is met with suspicion. It is not hated for being wrong, but for being untamed. The individual, when he awakens to his difference, feels a rupture, a violent awareness that he does not belong to the tribe. This is both his curse and his liberation. He must now choosing to return to the warmth of acceptance and deny his uniqueness, or to embrace solitude and forge his path. Most choose the first. They return to the herd with their heads down and their dreams folded to silence. But a few, fierce, rare, and dangerous, choose the second. They become storms that walk among men, neither asking for permission nor waiting for approval. Society defends itself against such individuals with ridicule, accusation, and exile. It brands them as arrogant, antisocial, even mad. But the madness is only in their refusal to worship the gods of the many. They do not believe that justice lies in the consensus of the crowd. They do not measure truth by applause. They are not persuaded by popularity. The herd fears the individual because he is proof that another way is possible, and that terrifies them. He is a living contradiction to the lie that conformity is virtue. To rise above, one must develop an indifference to public approval. This is not mere rebellion. It is the cultivation of inner sovereignty. When a man ceases to fear disapproval, becomes a force, he no longer reacts, he initiates. He no longer defends, he declares. His actions are not calculated for applause, but for consequence. And in that, he becomes revered, feared, envied, and eventually imitated, but never truly understood. Because society does not understand power unless it comes wrapped in flattery or cloaked in humility. The man who speaks plainly, who reveals his will and acts without shame, offends the delicate sensibilities of the domesticated masses. The individual must learn to wear isolation like armor. His thoughts may not echo back to him in praise. His values may not be celebrated on stages, but that does not invalidate them. In fact, it confirms their power, for only that which threatens the collective illusion is met with such resistance. One does not silence a man who is wrong, one silences a man who is dangerous. And the most dangerous man is not he who seeks to destroy, but he who dares to think alone. What the world calls morality is a carefully woven net cast over the strong by the weak. It is not a divine commandment but a human invention, crafted not to elevate the noble spirit, but to contain it. The powerless, unable to conquer through will, created an ethic that punishes will itself. In this inverted system, restraint is seen as virtue and ambition as sin. It is not the restraint of wisdom, the restraint of fear masquerading as holiness. They do not want you to rise above them, so they teach you to cut your wings in the name of being good. The man who is master over himself does not need the approval of moral conventions. He governs not through external commandments, but through the strength of his own will. He does not suppress his instincts because others say they are bad. He studies them, dominates them, and channels them into power. It is not morality that makes a man strong. It is the discipline of self-command. The fool avoids temptation by running away from it. The wise man stands face to face with it, unmoved because he has bent his impulses into submission. Meekness is not strength. It is submission dressed as virtue. The masses, terrified by the fire of passion and the hunger for dominance, call such fire evil, not because it truly is, but because it threatens the lie they live by. Always preach humility, patience, obedience, not to elevate your soul, but to neutralize your force. They do not want you to master your nature. They want you to deny it entirely. And when you do, they celebrate it because now you are harmless. You have traded the sword of your spirit for the approval of cowards. Power is not found in suppressing desire, but in controlling it. The man who represses his nature becomes bitter and hollow. The man who channels his nature becomes a creator, a warrior, a leader. To desire is not weakness. To be ruled by desire is. Therefore, the goal is not to erase the self, but to forge it into something sharp and unshakable. Morality, then, is not the avoidance of the dark. It is the ability to walk through the dark with head high and your will unbroken. The great man is not afraid of being called ruthless, because he knows that cruelty is sometimes clarity. He does not flinch when hard choices must be made, because he understands that to hesitate in the face of necessity is to betray life itself. He does not harm for pleasure, but he does not blink when harm must be done. Weak men recoil at this because they cannot distinguish between control and chaos. They think strength is brutality, and so they avoid strength altogether. True mastery is not blind aggression. It is intelligent force. There is a higher morality, but it does not concern itself with the approval of the many. It is not taught in churches or celebrated in public squares. It is the private code of those who build empires, of those who do not ask for permission to live fully. It is a morality of sovereignty, of self-mastery, of disciplined force. It is dangerous and therefore it is hidden. But it is this morality that creates greatness. It does not preach forgiveness when vengeance is just. It does not worship humility when confidence is required. It does not elevate fragility. It sharpens the soul against it. The modern world tries to shame the man who acts out of strength, calling him cold, inhuman, heartless. But in truth, it fears him, because he cannot be controlled by guilt, because he cannot be broken by shame, because he cannot be manipulated by those who rely on weakness disguised as compassion. And so, it invents a morality that chains the capable to the incapable. But those who see clearly, who live by the truth of power, must reject this. They must embrace a higher discipline. A morality not of submission, but of superiority. Essence of power lies not in waiting for someone to declare you worth, but in declaring yourself. To seek permission is to admit dependence. It is the whisper of the obedient man who still dreams the world is fair, that merit is always rewarded, that recognition will arrive if only he is good enough. This is the myth of the slave. The truth is far more violent. Legitimacy is not granted, it is taken. Those who win are those who seize the moment before others even realize it existed. They do not linger in self-doubt or in the shadow of others' opinions. They carve out space for their will and defend it with fire. In every era, the great names, those who shaped empires, altered philosophies, rewrote history, did not begin with approval. They began with defiance. They stepped forward when others waited. They moved while others questioned. They understood that to lead, one must not be loved first. One must first be feared or envied. The applause comes later, sometimes only after death, and it is meaningless by then. The real reward is the shaping of the world in one's own image. It is not the smile of the crowd that proves greatness. It is the silence of your enemies as they fall away. The weak speak of justice, of fairness, of democratic agreement. These are tools of delay. These are structures designed to slow the rise of the exceptional. Exceptional does not ask, "May I?" The exceptional acts, and in acting he defines what is allowed. He sets a new standard, not by negotiation, but by imposition. The man of strength does not consult morality before stepping forward. He consults reality. He sees what must be done and does it. Those who resist are simply obstacles to be overcome. Their protest is irrelevant. Their permission is unnecessary. Most men wait. They wait for the perfect time, for the right mood, for approval, for a sign from the heavens. The ruthless man waits for nothing. He creates momentum through force of will alone. He does not ask if the throne is empty. He walks into the chamber and sits on it. And in doing so, he becomes king, not because others crowned him, because he behaved like one. Others follow because they sense their authority, not because they agreed to it beforehand. Leadership, after all, is not given. It is asserted. Society tries to convince the strong that they must be kind, inclusive, modest. But these virtues are preached most loudly by those who fear being outpaced. They are not values, they are tranquilizers. When the strong believe they must wait their turn, the weak are safe. When the strong start apologizing for their ambition, the mediocre feel comfortable. But this comfort is built on the lie that everyone must follow the same path, at the same pace, with the same smile. This is not evolution. This is imprisonment. Those who rise above are always seen as dangerous, especially in their early stages. They are accused of arrogance, of cruelty, of impatience. It isn't these qualities that make them feared. It is their refusal to kneel. The man who does not kneel to false gods, to public opinion, to the fragile expectations of his age, is a man who threatens the very order of things. And rightly so. The world needs disruption. The herd may crave stability. Only chaos produces greatness. In chaos, legitimacy is defined by action, not ceremony. The crown is not placed on the head of the worthy. It is taken by the one who dares to reach for it. Power is drawn to movement. The man who moves boldly draws in his wake. The man who hesitates is forgotten. Do not waste time waiting for the perfect title, the perfect opportunity, the perfect justification. Those who wait rot. Those who act reshape the horizon. In the eyes of the crowd, legitimacy is proven by the past. But in the mind of the superior man, it is born the moment of execution. When you act with full conviction, the world adjusts its rules around you. It tries to catch up. It struggles to name you, to place you, to understand you. But by then, you have already moved again. The world has never been ruled by the kind, nor shaped by the well-behaved. It is carved, burned, and reformed by those willing to embrace the darkness within themselves. The ones who triumph are not those who hope for harmony, but those who dare to disrupt it. They are unafraid to be feared, unafraid to be alone, unafraid to destroy illusions, because they know that only through destruction can truth emerge. While the herd prays for safety, the superior individual understands that power does not lie in following the rules, but in rewriting them. To win in a world built on deception, stagnation, and compromise, you must become a force that cannot be ignored. Ruthlessness is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is the refusal to be shackled by softness when the world respects only strength. History does not remember the passive. It remembers the defiant. And if you wish to rise above the mass of forgotten souls, then you must reject the comfort of goodness and embrace the burden of greatness. Because in the end, power does not bend to morality. Morality bends to power.